The rain tapped gently against our living room windows as I sat beside Emma on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder while we half-watched some cooking show neither of us cared about. These quiet Sunday evenings had become our sanctuary, a weekly ritual where we'd shut out the chaos of our busy lives and just exist together. After 12 years of marriage, we'd learned to treasure these moments of simple togetherness. Emma shifted slightly, her fingers intertwined with mine, and I caught the faint scent of her lavender shampoo. She'd always been meticulous about the little things, the way she organized the spice rack alphabetically, how she folded my shirts with mathematical precision, the careful routine of her Sunday evening skincare that she was postponing tonight just to stay close to me. I'd fallen in love with these details, these small windows into who she was. "This is nice," she murmured, her voice soft and drowsy. "We should do nothing more often." I smiled, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Agreed. Though I think we're pretty good at doing nothing already." She laughed, that gentle sound that had drawn me to her at a mutual friend's barbecue 13 years ago. Back then, she'd been the quieter one in her group, standing slightly apart with a wine glass, observing rather than performing. I'd approached her, made some terrible joke about the overcooked burgers, and she'd laughed exactly like this. 3 months later, I'd proposed on a beach at sunset, traditional and predictable, because that's who we were, comfortable, steady, predictable. Our life together had unfolded like a well-written blueprint. We'd bought this house in the suburbs 5 years ago, a charming 3-bedroom colonial with a maple tree in the front yard. Emma worked as a hospital administrator, managing schedules and budgets with the same precision she applied to everything else. I'd built a modest career in insurance, predictable hours, decent pay, nothing glamorous but stable. We'd talked about kids, decided to wait, then waited so long we'd quietly shelved the conversation. We had friends, took annual vacations to beach resorts, hosted dinner parties where Emma's homemade lasagna was always the star. Looking back now, I realize how carefully constructed it all was. Not fake, exactly, but curated. Like a museum exhibit of a happy marriage, every piece placed just so. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced at the screen, unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me reach for it. Maybe it was the lateness of the hour, nearly 9 o'clock on a Sunday. Maybe it was instinct. David Foster. The voice on the other end was male, unfamiliar, with an edge of nervousness that immediately put me on alert. "Yes, who's this?" Emma lifted her head from my shoulder, her eyes questioning. I shrugged, mouthing "don't know." "My name is Michael Pearson." God, I don't know how to say this. There was a long pause, and I heard him take a shaky breath. "I'm calling because I think you deserve to know the truth. About Emma. About your wife." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Emma was watching me now, her expression shifting from curious to concerned. The cooking show continued its cheerful chatter in the background, someone explaining the proper way to fold dough, and the normalcy of it felt suddenly obscene. "What are you talking about?" My voice came out steady, but my heart had begun to hammer. "I've been seeing her. We've been together for almost 2 years now." The words tumbled out quickly, as if he'd been rehearsing them. "I'm calling because I can't do this anymore. I told her today that I want her to leave you, to be with me openly, and she refused. She said she'd never leave you, that what we have is just. God, I'm sorry, man. But you need to know who you're married to." The phone felt heavy in my hand. I looked at Emma, really looked at her, and watched as understanding dawned on her face. She'd heard enough, or maybe she just recognized something in my expression. The color drained from her cheeks. I lowered the phone, not hanging up, just holding it against my leg. "Emma," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Is he telling the truth?" The seconds stretched into an eternity. Emma's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I watched her face cycle through emotions: shock, fear, calculation, resignation. It was that last one that broke something inside me. Resignation meant she knew exactly what was happening, meant there was no confusion, no mistaken identity, no elaborate misunderstanding that would make this all go away. "David, she began, but I held up my hand. I brought the phone back to my ear. My voice, when it came, Sounded like it belonged to someone else. You still there? Yeah. Michael Pearson's voice was thick with emotion. Look, I'm not trying to ruin your life. But I'm in love with her, and she's been stringing me along, and you're living in a lie. I thought you had a right to know. Where did you meet? I don't know why that was my first question. Maybe because my mind couldn't process the enormity of it yet, so it focused on details. At the hospital. I'm a pharmaceutical rep. I've been calling on her department for 3 years. We started talking, then coffee, then. He trailed off. I'm not proud of this. But I fell for her. Hard. And she told me she felt the same way, that her marriage was comfortable but empty, that she loved you like a friend but wasn't in love with you anymore. Each word landed like a physical blow. Emma had started crying silently, tears streaming down her face, but she didn't move from her spot on the couch. She just sat there, watching me disintegrate. How long exactly? I asked. 22 months. Almost 2 years, like I said. And you're calling now because? Because I asked her to choose today. I told her I'm 36 years old, I want a real relationship, marriage, maybe kids. I can't keep being the secret anymore. And she chose you. She said she'd never leave you, that what we had was wonderful but it wasn't real life. His laugh was bitter. As if sneaking around for 2 years, spending nights together whenever you traveled for work, planning a whole future together, as if that wasn't real. I closed my eyes. My business trips. I traveled maybe once a month, sometimes for 3 or 4 days at a stretch. Insurance conferences, client meetings, all the tedious but necessary parts of my job. Emma had always seemed supportive, had kissed me goodbye with what I'd thought was genuine affection, had called me each evening to check in. The nights I was away. I asked, my voice hollow. Most of them, yeah. Sometimes she'd come to my place. Sometimes we'd get a hotel, make a weekend of it. We went to that bed and breakfast in Vermont last October, the one with the apple orchard. I remembered last October. I'd been in Chicago for a conference. Emma had mentioned spending the weekend with her college friend Sarah, catching up and hiking. She'd come home with photos on her phone, brilliant fall foliage, her smiling face, a rustic inn in the background. She'd seemed refreshed, happy. I'd been pleased she'd taken time for herself. I need to go, I said and ended the call before he could respond. The silence in the room was deafening. Even the television seemed to have quieted, though that might have just been my perception. Everything felt muffled, like I was underwater. Emma finally spoke, her voice trembling. David, please let me explain. Explain. The word tasted like ash. Explain 22 months of lying? Explain how you could kiss me goodbye and then spend my business trips with another man? Explain Vermont. She flinched. How did he? He told me everything, Emma. The hotel rooms, the bed and breakfast, all of it. I stood up, needing space, needing air. I walked to the window and stared out at our quiet suburban street. The Johnson's house across the way had their porch light on. Mr. Johnson was probably reading his Sunday paper. Mrs. Johnson was likely knitting. Normal people doing normal things in their normal lives. It started innocently, Emma said behind me. Just conversation at first. He was nice, funny, paid attention to me. You were so busy with work, and I was stressed with the hospital restructuring, and he just listened. So this is my fault. I turned to face her, anger finally breaking through the shock. I didn't pay enough attention, so you had an affair? No. She stood up, her hands outstretched pleadingly. No, David, it's not your fault. It's mine. All mine. I made these choices. I'm just trying to tell you how it happened. I don't care how it happened. But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. Part of me desperately wanted to understand, to find some logic in this chaos. Actually, no. Tell me. Tell me everything. You owe me that much. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, looking smaller somehow. He asked me to lunch after a few months of friendly conversation. I said yes. It was just lunch, in a public cafeteria. But we talked for over an hour, and I felt seen. Like someone was actually interested in what I thought, what I felt, what I wanted. I'm interested in those things. Are you? Her voice was quiet but challenging. When was the last time you asked me about my dreams, David? When did we last talk about anything besides bills and grocery lists and whether we needed to call the plumber? Her question hung in the air between us, and I hated that I couldn't immediately answer it. When had we last had a real conversation? One that went deeper than the logistics of daily life. I searched my memory and came up empty, or at least couldn't find anything recent enough to use as a defense. That doesn't justify this, I said finally, but my voice had lost some of its certainty. Lots of marriages fall into routine. You talk about it. You go to counseling. You don't just. I gestured helplessly, unable to finish the sentence. I know. Emma's tears had slowed, leaving wet tracks on her cheeks that caught the lamplight. You're right. There's no justification. But you asked me to explain, so I'm trying to. I moved to the armchair across from the couch, needing the physical distance, needing to see her face clearly. Keep going. She took a shaky breath. After that first lunch, we started meeting regularly. Just coffee at first, always in public places. I told myself it was innocent, just friendship. But somewhere around month 4 or 5, I realized I was thinking about him constantly. Checking my phone for his messages, planning my outfits on days I knew I'd see him, feeling this excitement I hadn't felt in years. Around month 5, I said slowly, that would have been right before our anniversary. The one where we went to that fancy restaurant, and I gave you the diamond earrings. She nodded miserably. You were so sweet that night. So thoughtful. And I felt like a monster because all I could think about was whether Michael would text me. When did it become physical? 7 months in. You were in Boston for that 3-day conference. He'd been pressing for more, and I kept saying no, but that week I called him. Invited him over. She paused, and when she continued, her voice was barely audible. I told myself it was just once, that I'd get it out of my system. But once became twice, then every time you traveled, then stolen hours during lunch breaks in his car or at cheap motels on the edge of town. The level of planning this required, the sustained deception, it was staggering. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a parallel life, carefully constructed and maintained for almost 2 years. Did you love him? The question came out before I could stop it. Emma's face crumpled. I thought I did. Or maybe I loved how he made me feel. Young, desired, exciting. With him, I wasn't Emma who files hospital paperwork and worries about retirement savings. I was someone mysterious, passionate, living on the edge. And with me? What were you with me? Safe, she whispered. Comfortable. Home. The word should have been comforting, but it felt like a condemnation. Safe and comfortable, that's what you called a favorite sweater, not a marriage. Not the person you'd pledged your life to. So why didn't you leave? I asked. If he made you feel all those things, why choose me? Why did he have to call me? Why didn't you have the courage to do it yourself? Because. The word exploded from her, raw and desperate. Because this is real life, David. Because passion fades and excitement becomes ordinary, and then what do you have? Because you're a good man, a kind man, and we have a life together, a house, shared friends, shared history. Because I'm 39 years old and the idea of starting over terrifies me. Because maybe safe and comfortable isn't the worst thing in the world. It is when you're betraying it. I was on my feet again, pacing. You can't have both, Emma. You can't have the stability of marriage and the thrill of an affair. That's not how this works. I know that now. She was crying again, harder this time. Michael made that clear today. He gave me an ultimatum, choose him or end it completely. And I chose you. I chose us. You chose wrong. The words were out before I could think about them, but once said, I realized they were true. You didn't choose me, Emma. You chose comfort over courage. You chose the easier path. If you'd really chosen me, you would have ended it months ago. You would have come clean, begged for forgiveness, fought for our marriage. Instead, you got caught. That's not fair. None of this is fair. I shouted, then immediately lowered my voice, aware of our neighbors. You had an affair for 2 years. You lied to me every single day. You slept in our bed after sleeping with him. You said you loved me while being in love with someone else. Don't talk to me about fair. Emma stood up, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself. What do you want me to say, David? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I hate myself for what I've done. I hate that I hurt you. I hate that I'm not the person you thought I was. Who are you, then? I asked. Because the woman I married wouldn't have done this. The woman I thought I knew for 13 years wouldn't have been capable of this level of deception. Maybe you never knew me as well as you thought. Her voice was soft but held an edge. Maybe I never knew myself until Michael showed me parts of me I'd buried. I stared at her, seeing a stranger in my wife's face. Did he show you those parts, or did he create them? Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you became someone you're not, playing a role in his fantasy. Or maybe, she said quietly, I became someone I actually am, and this, she gestured at our carefully decorated living room, at the life we'd built. Maybe this is the fantasy. The statement struck me like a slap. Was our entire marriage a lie? Had she been pretending all along, just waiting for someone like Michael Pearson to come along and offer her an escape route? My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, Michael calling back. I declined it, but the interruption shifted something in the room. He loves you, I said. He called me because he loves you and wanted you to choose him. That takes guts, I guess. Stupid guts, but guts nonetheless. Emma's expression shifted to something I couldn't quite read. He loves an illusion. He loves the woman who escapes her real life for a few stolen hours. He doesn't know me when I'm stressed about budget cuts at work, or when I'm fighting with my mother, or when I have food poisoning and I'm not romantic at all. And I do know that woman, I said slowly, understanding dawning. I know every version of you, the good days and the bad days, the beautiful moments and the ugly ones. That's what marriage is. It's not some highlight reel. I know. She took a tentative step toward me. That's why I chose you. Because you know me, really know me, in ways Michael never could. Except you're wrong. I held up a hand to stop her approach. I don't know you at all. I didn't sleep. I lay in the guest bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me, each creak and groan a reminder that this was still my home but it no longer felt like mine. Around 3 in the morning, I heard Emma's footsteps in the hallway, pausing outside the guest room door. She didn't knock. After a long moment, I heard her walk away. Dawn came slowly, grey light filtering through the blinds. I'd spent the sleepless hours cycling through memories, re-examining every moment of the past 2 years through this new, devastating lens. That Saturday she'd seemed distant and distracted. Had she been with him that afternoon? The time she'd come home from book club with a new perfume I hadn't recognized, a gift from him? The night she'd initiated sex with an urgency that had surprised and pleased me. Was she thinking of him? Every memory was now contaminated. Suspect. I couldn't trust my own past. At 7, I heard Emma moving around downstairs. The coffee maker beeped. Normal morning sounds in a morning that was anything but normal. I showered in the guest bathroom, dressed in yesterday's clothes, and steeled myself to face her. She was at the kitchen table when I came down, her hands wrapped around a coffee mug, eyes red and swollen from crying. She'd clearly slept as little as I had. There was a mug poured for me, the way I liked it, 2 sugars, splash of cream. Even now, she remembered these small details. It made everything worse somehow. Morning, she said quietly. I nodded, taking the coffee but remaining standing, leaning against the counter. The distance felt important. I've been thinking all night, Emma began, her voice hoarse. About what you said, about choices and consequences. You're right about everything. And I need you to know that I'm not going to fight for this marriage by making excuses or trying to shift blame. If you want a divorce, I'll give you one. I won't contest it, won't make it difficult. I'll take full responsibility. That's very noble, I said, unable to keep the sarcasm from my voice. It's not about being noble. It's about finally being honest and accepting what I've done. She looked up at me, and I saw something in her face I hadn't seen last night, a kind of resignation mixed with clarity. I destroyed us. I know that. And if you can't forgive me, I understand. Do you love him? I asked suddenly. Really love him, not the fantasy version. Emma considered the question carefully. I loved the escape he represented. I loved feeling desired and exciting. But real love? The kind that survives Monday mornings and stomach flu and financial stress. She shook her head slowly. I don't know if what I felt for Michael could have survived reality. It was never tested. It existed in stolen moments and hotel rooms, never in real life. And us? Did you ever really love me, or was I just the safe choice from the beginning? I loved you completely, she said, her voice breaking. I loved you the day we married. And I love you now. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being in love with the daily reality of us. I started taking you for granted, started resenting the routine, started believing I was entitled to more excitement. And instead of talking to you about it, instead of working on us, I betrayed you in the worst possible way. It was the most honest she'd been, and it hurt more than her lies. Because it wasn't a simple story of a villain and a victim. It was the messy truth of two people who'd let their connection erode without noticing until it was too late. I'm going to a hotel for a few days, I said. I need space to think without you here. While I'm gone, you should think about whether you actually want this marriage or whether you're just afraid of being alone. Because I won't be your security blanket, Emma. I won't be the backup plan you settle for because the exciting option didn't work out. I understand. And I'm still calling a lawyer today. Not to necessarily start divorce proceedings, but to understand what that would look like. I need to know my options. Okay. She wiped at her eyes. Can I ask one thing? I waited. If there's any chance you might forgive me, any possibility we could work through this, would you consider couples counseling? Not now, not until you're ready, but eventually. Maybe, I admitted. But Emma, I need you to understand something. Even if I decide to try to forgive you, even if we go to counseling and work through this, our marriage is gone. That version of us, the innocent trust, the uncomplicated love, that died last night. If we rebuild, it'll be something new, something different. It might be stronger eventually, but it'll never be what it was. I know. She stood up, and for a moment I thought she might try to hug me. She didn't. I'm so sorry, David. For all of it. For every lie, every betrayal, every moment I chose my selfishness over your trust. If I could take it all back, I would. But you can't, I said. None of us can take back our choices. We can only live with the consequences. I left her standing in our kitchen and went upstairs to pack a bag. In our bedroom, my bedroom. The bed was unmade. Emma's side obviously slept in, mine untouched. I grabbed clothes from my dresser, toiletries from the bathroom we'd shared. My wedding ring caught the morning light, and I stared at it for a long moment before leaving it on. As I drove away from our house, I saw Emma watching from the living room window. She raised a hand, not quite a wave, more an acknowledgement. I didn't wave back. The hotel was a generic chain on the highway, the kind I'd stayed in dozens of times for work. I checked in, went to my sterile room, and sat on the edge of the bed. Only then did I allow myself to cry, deep, wrenching sobs for the loss of my marriage, for the betrayal, for the future that had been stolen from me. But between the tears, something else emerged, a strange sense of clarity. For years, I'd been coasting, letting life happen to me rather than actively choosing it. I'd settled into comfortable patterns with Emma without questioning whether we were both truly happy or just avoiding the difficult work of deepening our connection. Her affair was inexcusable, but our marriage had been dying slowly long before Michael Pearson came along. Over the next few days, I met with a lawyer, learned about divorce proceedings and asset division. I met with a therapist, started working through the trauma and betrayal. I called my brother, who offered to fly out, an offer I declined but appreciated. I ignored 3 more texts from Michael Pearson. And I thought about what I wanted, about whether forgiveness was possible, about whether I wanted to try to rebuild with Emma or walk away and start fresh. On the 5th day, Emma texted, "I blocked Michael, changed my route at work to avoid his territory, told my supervisor about the situation, asked to be notified if he shows up. I'm seeing a therapist. Not to win you back, but because I need to understand why I did this. Take all the time you need. I'll be here if you decide to come back, and I'll understand if you don't." I stared at the message for a long time. It was what I'd asked for, what I needed to hear. But more than that, it sounded like the first step toward genuine change rather than damage control. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I went for a walk along the river near the hotel, watching the water flow past, constant and indifferent to human drama. An older couple walked by, holding hands, comfortable in their silence. Had they weathered storms like this? Or had their decades together been smoother, untested? There were no easy answers. No clear path forward. Emma had shattered our marriage, but we'd both let it become fragile enough to break. If I walked away, I'd be justified, but I'd also be walking away from 13 years of history, from someone I'd loved deeply despite everything. If I stayed and tried to rebuild, I'd be choosing one of the hardest paths I'd ever walk, but possibly ending up with something stronger, more honest, more real than what we'd had before. That evening, I returned to the hotel and wrote Emma an email. Not a decision, but a beginning. I'm not ready to come home yet, but I'm willing to try therapy, together, if you're serious about understanding yourself and changing. This will take years, not months. There will be setbacks and terrible days. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust you again, and I don't know if what we rebuild will be enough for either of us. But I'm willing to try. Not because you deserve it, you don't. But because I need to know I tried everything before I walk away from 13 years. First session is next Tuesday at 3 p.m. Dr. Patricia Morrison. I'll send you the address. If you're even 1 minute late, I'm done. No more chances. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Her response came within minutes. I'll be there at 2:45. Thank you for giving me a chance I don't deserve. I love you. I stared at those 3 words, I love you. They'd once been simple, comforting, routine. Now they were complicated, painful, weighted with betrayal and broken trust. But underneath all that, maybe there was still something worth fighting for. Or maybe there wasn't. Maybe in 6 months or a year, I'd realize forgiveness was impossible, that too much had been broken to repair. Maybe Emma would realize she couldn't live with the weight of her guilt and my inevitable moments of anger and suspicion. Maybe we'd both discover we'd grown into people who no longer fit together. But for now, in this hotel room on this ordinary Thursday evening, I chose to try. Not because I'd forgiven her, I hadn't, but because I owed it to myself to explore every possibility before making a final choice. The quiet Sunday evening that had started with comfortable routine and ended with a devastating phone call had changed everything. But perhaps, in the wreckage, there was a chance to build something more honest, more resilient, more consciously chosen than the comfortable illusion we'd been living. I'd find out on Tuesday. 1 session at a time, 1 difficult conversation at a time, 1 painful step at a time. The old marriage was dead. Whether a new one could rise from its ashes remained to be seen.